I'd like to talk to you about a general concept that seems to be rather commonplace and is starting to concern me. Now, if you've got a relatively active interest in the world around you, and you pay attention at least to some extent to the state of the world and to the politics of your own country and overseas, I've observed that the more and more someone looks into these subjects, the less and less they feel they fit in with the mainstream parties. At least, that's the way it is in the United States. The more and more you know about the world around you, and the more informed you are politically, the less you'll feel Democrat or Republican, those being our two main parties here in the US, are suitable titles for you. Or at least strongly disagree with both presidential candidates, or feel that there are too many different kinds of liberals or conservatives that a single party identification becomes insufficient when you realize two conservatives may be nothing alike. In many cases, this crowd of people will generally be comprised of those who, even if not particularly informed or intellectual individuals themselves, are at the least able to recognize some of the most obvious flaws. I'm noticing, however, that many people, upon noticing they were correct about something, correlate that into being correct about everything. With the videos I made back during the Snowden leak and PRISM incident, I highlighted in both videos that people's reactions were sometimes highly irrational in favor of jumping on a civil liberties bandwagon, and it was clear a lot of people didn't really understand what they were criticizing anymore, often using incorrect definitions or lobbying inaccurate criticisms. I feel this is best displayed by those that jumped to praise nations that offered Snowden asylum, such as North Korea, without any thought to how these nations might have ulterior motives. Another example would be those who follow Ron Paul, not because of his political ideals or agenda, but simply because he is Ron Paul. People like that do understand the most obvious political issues, but don't seem to be grasping more complicated aspects. It seems to me that a lot of people following Ron Paul don't necessarily understand his political agenda. He's a politician who is against the current establishment, and that's enough for some people to decide that he's right and follow him. I've met a lot of people who identify themselves as Ron Paul libertarians, but their entire political ideology has been based off what one person said, and the extent of their understanding of economics has been that which they've been told by Ron Paul. That's not the way it's supposed to work. If I do succeed in launching my own political party, you're supposed to agree with me because the facts supported my case, and you decided you'd do the research and listen to arguments from differing perspectives, and from doing that in an unbiased manner, you come to the point where you agree with me, not because I said something and it's therefore accepted as truth. If we're ever actually going to see a truly meaningful improvement, or have some sort of legitimate political party that is capable of setting up a government able to keep itself clean of corruption in the long term, we need higher standards of behavior than that. Another particularly common concept, which is often used as a joke, but also commonly used as a serious if-we-could-do-it statement, is the idea of taking all the people who could see through the standard political lies and breaking off and forming our own nation. For example, if we found an ancient alien teleporter that would send us to a different Earth-like planet and be able to leave Earth behind, and we somehow could round up all the people subscribed to TED Talks and all the people uncomfortable with the main political parties and take all the people we consider above the intelligence level of a sheep and just leave the planet, go make our own civilization. But out of those who would do that if they could, how many have considered the actual ramifications of us doing so? Furthermore, how many of the people who would do that would still view each other as too unintelligent to come along? It's a degree of ignorance I think we should show more concern for, and to some extent, quantity does beat quality. If we split off from Earth in that manner and had a new nation of only a few million people, assuming all transportation and housing issues and other menial problems were dealt with already, then we lost all contact with Earth, we'd probably have a pretty nice technological production level by Earth standards if we were comparing to just one nation. However, how do you think we compare to all of the output of our few millions compared to Earth's 7 billion? If we don't have the technology to make a robotic working class and other special benefits which our current technological level doesn't actually have in real life, we'd start incurring a number of issues that would slow our development. If given the chance to make my own nation and I could pick where to locate it, I'd probably try to find a decent spot so we could not just work on our own technological and cultural progress, but also copy the technology and innovations that are developed by other nations. Or, assuming I somehow got almost all of the intellectuals and innovators and held a practical monopoly on technological advancement, I'd at least need raw materials and industrial benefits from other nations, and they're needed more and more as we make the feasibility of starting a nation more and more realistic. The chances of us finding an alien teleporter are very unlikely. The chances of us finding land that we can take without severe political or military contest that also happens to house a great deal of useful raw materials, such as oil for our machinery and gold for our computer parts, is even more unlikely. And that's not even mentioning the fact that in some cases quality isn't able to supersede quantity. I have numerous social experiments and economic experiments that I'd like to conduct to better create the perfect nation, with the perfect economy and the perfect culture. And if I only had, say, 10 million people, the progress of that would be incredibly slow, just because I don't have enough bodies. But if I were given governorship of China, for example, I could probably find many towns to split off thousands of people for social or economic experiments fairly easily. And furthermore, even if those experiments turned out to give negative results, the overall economic state of the country wouldn't be impacted to any noticeable extent. Suppose I wanted to offer the libertarians their dream, and I said, hey, my nation now has all this unoccupied territory, I'm going to section this area off and let you make a completely libertarian state. All the libertarians can go there. You can all design your own laws and your own mini-culture. The only catch is you're loyal to my central government, etc., etc. And by the way, in a different region, I'm letting a bunch of communists make their own communist state, and they have to follow the same set of rules that I'm giving you, and my central government will be keeping track of your progress, quality of life, industrial capabilities, technological advancement, etc., etc. And we'll see who can make a civilization that outshines the other. Keep in mind, this is an experiment I would be willing to conduct if given what I considered a reasonable and realistic opportunity to do so. I can't do that experiment without enough people who want to live in one or the other of those situations, not without the risk of massive brain drain or other internal conflicts. With a tiny nation of 10 million people, even if they all are of above-average intelligence, there's some things we just can't do that other larger nations could do if they wanted to. A bigger nation can conduct more experiments on live populations than I can, unless I go out of my way to experiment on other countries, which is less convenient. A bigger nation can simply outproduce us in terms of goods that we may need, such as metal for our robots. And it's a depressing thought that if I made my own nation, it would be dependent on copying the technological progress of other nations, and/or obtaining raw materials and resources from them and doing business with them, at least for the first while, if I wanted to remain competitive with them. And realistically speaking, I must remain competitive to avoid brain drain. As such, I feel it's a lot more plausible to obtain control of an already existing nation than it is to found a new nation from scratch. Despite how I might want to colonize Antarctica and create biodome cities with tropical rainforests and an Antarctic climate, it doesn't seem to be very practical. And it's a disturbing concept that perhaps ignorance is stronger than intelligence by virtue of ignorance being able to outproduce. It's easier to raise ignorant children than it is to raise critical thinkers. If a couple smart people dominate, in the words of George Carlin, obedient workers, perhaps their culture might outproduce us. No matter how superior we consider our culture of education to be. Our state can brag about higher life expectancy and how low our crime rates are and how much we have personal freedoms, but if that's countered by a mob of people 50 times our size chanting, "Obamni, Obamni," who simply exist with lower life quality and higher crime rates because they're not educated enough to understand they need educations, and they can still vastly outproduce us and hold our feet to the fire because we don't have the oil and steel we need without them, then this is a problem, because as ignorant as people are, we do need them, at least for the time being. And while we're on the subject, let's consider again that those considering themselves more intelligent is a category of people which some Obamni supporters will be in, and I feel this highlights the importance of continuing to scrutinize one's own beliefs, which is a habit I feel many people considering themselves intelligent stop doing after a while, even among those who are correct in their self-assessment. And that's something I think anyone calling themselves a thinker should be wary of. So for now, I leave you with a mental exercise for today. I want you to ponder the power of ignorance and compare it to the power of education and intelligence, and think about how to deal with this problem. Post the results of your ponderance in the comments section below, and discuss with one another about building the strongest civilization if you so choose. Also, I want you to consider if you've left a blind spot in your political ideology, and look into it if so. Remember to like this video, favorite it, subscribe, and most importantly, share it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Later, YouTube.